Recording. All right, good. All right, let me get on here and go. Okay, Google Docs. So I was gonna make a post in the group, but there was so much to talk about, so I decided to make a video. So let's see how this goes. Um, so on the last game, uh, Moffat talked about that he's always running a game and never gets to play, and I don't know too much about harp. So I offered that I could run a game, and if it's okay with him, I'm posting this here so that he can play, and then I can run because I don't know anything about harp. I don't know if I could run stuff in harp. Uh, I've still got some things I need to learn about it. But I could do uh, this game that I've created. So I've made in the background. I've been making this, which is Forsaken. This is Dark Age, but it uses the Dark Age tabletop rules. So the same, everything's a D20, and why did you stop it? Okay, share screen. So everything in here is based on that. So I've essentially made a game where you create your own Dark Age mini, and everything is the same rule set. So like a skill, you would have a bonus, you would take that bonus, and then there would be a difficulty, and you would add those two together, and then you would roll a d20 and try to get that number or under, and then ones are always a success and 20s are always a failure. And I actually took his advice. He added me to a group. So I sort of copied his way of doing things and made my own Facebook group. And I've added a couple people to it. So he's really helped a lot with fleshing out the world and on how to do certain things. So here's the skills and the certain things. So the abilities. So these are the main abilities. So similar abilities like psych to and power to the Dark Age miniature game. And I made this to be played on a table with terrain, and you would actually measure out like where your stuff is going. The original concept is to create this to bring the game back, because the idea is that I saw similar stuff happening with other games where like people would play the role-playing game that used the same rules as a miniature game, and they would buy all these models, and then of course they'd be like, well, I've got all these models, I can just play this faction. I bought all this militia from this one faction that's the the shooty faction. I can then just take the militia people and then play that faction. And then you would play other factions that you never thought you would play. But what is different is I really enjoy random tables. I originally had a whole bunch of random tables on here. So this is sort of going to be a primer for like, if y'all want to do this, if this is something you want to do, but this would give David Moffat a chance to play as a character for once, and then I can run because I love running. And then disclaimer, I don't know Dark Age. They're owned by Dark Age Games, and this is not for resale. Okay, I'm not a lawyer, but I originally had charts where you could roll up all the kinds of races like Katarl and Eltegrin, Kukulkani, all of that. But now it's just human, so I have human and cherub, and then one is you pick. So this game, I don't know where I got this idea from, but session 0 or session 1 has to have everybody there at the party. So you'll have to be there, and if you get a 1 on a chart, you get to pick. So there's like 10 charts that you have to roll up for your background, your skills that you were before you became an adventurer or a bounty hunter. And you can spend a certain number of fate points. So depending on what y'all say, I can put in fate points. You spend a fate point on a chart, and you just pick on that chart what you want. And you can do that before or after the roll. So the first session we have, we're all going to be rolling it, and then we'll be sitting around a table since we're not like there in person. And you can pick each one that you do. And so if you roll a 20, the player to your left will pick which one you get. So it should be really fun. And I wanted it to be in the rule set that you had to be there together to make your character. You can't make your character and then come to the game. And then, so that again, that brings me to the good thing is that since I'm making this game, you know, I'm hoping for feedback, and I can change some stuff if it doesn't make sense. But then that's also sort of the bad thing about it is that I've literally made the system from scratch. So there may be at some points where you have to bear with me on how stuff works. So you've got backgrounds, and you can have like grafted on as a kid. You could be a follower of one of the saints. So I'm sort of torn on this, and I don't know, and y'all can comment below like what you think, but I feel like if I run a game in for Moffat to play in, I would have to play in the same time frame that he's playing in, which I think is after 10 SC. So there's no Kukulkani, there's no core, there's no none of the craziness has happened. But if y'all want to play in a later time, because the good thing about this is that it uses the exact same rule set as and similar stats to Dark Age, is that when I'm preparing stuff for you to fight, I'm going to be pulling those stat cards, you know, from the game, you know. So I'll pull out like, you know, maybe not a Nightmare Juggernaut, but I would be pulling out those stats like menial bots, and I would be using them. But if y'all want to do it in the same world and in the same time frame, like let me know, and I could probably limit some of this stuff because some of this is like core parts, you know, get put on you, and you know, you can sort of take some of these and change some of them so you get tainted by the brood. So you may play that as like, you know, one of your arms is like a tentacle, and it's constantly, you know, pushing you to do bad things because you like to do bad things, or you've proved yourself to a Jagiri, and so that may have been, you know, a fire cast or an ice cast, and so you may have some of those traits. And then there's also people believe you are a saint, and then excommunication, all this cool stuff. And these are all D20. Everything's D20. And I think it would be fun. I found myself playing stuff I wouldn't normally play and stuff, you know, because I've been testing this up probably for the past like 4 months. So I've just, you know, when I get bored, I roll on here, and it's just fun to see what you get, you know. One of the early versions of the game, I had Katara, which is the Dragiri, the big Trueborns, and I also got you're a follower of Mark as his first trait, and so I thought that was funny that it was a giant, you know, Trueborn that was, you know, just believed he was, you know, a follower of Mark. And so I sort of envisioned the character like if I'd actually played him, that he would be a follower of Mark, but he would sort of be like that Boondocks character. What is that guy? Uncle Ruckus. You know, like, you know, everybody would stay like, you know, 5 feet away from him, you know, because the humans wouldn't like him. They think, oh, you know, you're this big, you know, alien Catarl, you know, you're not holy. And then, you know, he'd be carrying around this giant Bible, telling people, you know, do you have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior? And then we've got another table here on faction. So, oh, it's frozen. Come on. Is it frozen? No. Oh, connection is lost. Oh, okay. So this is a faction if you, or this is a table that you need to roll if it comes up. So if you need to find out, like, you need to pick a faction randomly. So some of these is like your parents are killed. Roll to see which sub-faction did this. So you roll on here to see what faction did it. So it might be the Cult of Decay that killed your parents. So you're out for them. And then a random Dragiri cast. So if you prove yourself to a Dragiri, you get it on here on pick which cast. And you've got backgrounds. So you just pawn in Game of Life is, your extra large size. You grew up as a Scot. You lost a limb to another faction. You have a mind, a PUD in your mind telling you to do bad things. You've got a lash or tendril. You're brought back by the Kukulkani, forced through Fort Retribution. So you've got psychogenics. And then stat changes. So everybody starts out in here with a 2 in a stat, and then you get an increase on there from here, and then the next one gives you also an increase. And then sometimes some of the stuff up there, those other up there, the stuff over here might give you an increase in an ability. So there's no like rolling for abilities, they just give you a +1. Some stuff may give you a negative. And so there's all that. There's backgrounds there, and wait a second. Let me see if I can do this. Jump cut. All right. And then so there's one in here, I think. No, these are jobs. Okay. Raised by beasts. One of these is like you're born in a vat. You're vat born, just like yeah. Well, anyway, it's in here somewhere. So you can be like Saint Isaac, and so you'd be a mortician, a cook, noble, all that cool stuff. And then we got flaws. So I really like, gremlins where you're bad with electronics. You get drunk, you steal a lot. There's one in here where you're addicted to constantly replacing your body parts with either core, grafted, or brood parts. So right now there's only grafted stuff. There's no core. I don't have stats for brood stuff, but I just thought that was really cool. And then you say yes to everything. And then, of course, animosity is a great one. And then personal crusades. So I'd like to add some more to here to stuff that you have personally, that like a quest that you want to go out and do. Or maybe I can just make those up. And then I've got, well, so again, I've got everything here in this file. So if you want this, let me know, and I'll give you a link to it. So everybody's stats start like this. Here are the stats. Here's how you determine all your like defense. So defense, because you're going for the lowest number, if your defense is like a 2 and the opposing attack is like has an assault of 5, you would take 5 plus the 2, which is 7. So you would have to roll a d20 and get a 7 or better. And the way that you determine that is you take like your agility and your intelligence and you add those together and then subtract that number from 15. And that gives you your defense. Now I've got a psych defense, but I think I'm going to get rid of that. Yeah, I think I'm going to get rid of that. But then you've got armor. So after you take a hit, you take an armor save where you take the power of the hit. So if the hit is like a 6 and you have an armor of 10, you would then roll on a d20 and hope for a 4 or lower. And of course, a 1 is an automatic pass. And so skills, this is how they work. And then of course, I put in a random chart for adding a skill. So you can roll a chart, and then if you get like guns, you can then specialize in the gun. So they have parry. So if you have a melee weapon and you get hit with an attack, then you can parry it. So you make an attack roll or a skill check in the RPG here to avoid that attack, to like parry it out of the way. So when you specialize in stuff, you either get a +1 to that skill, or you can get stuff like a shield. You can get deflect, where you can deflect it. And then you've got barter, get followers, command people, and beasts. Bounty. So bounty I made as a skill. Oh, it's not on here. So I guess if you're a bounty hunter, bounty is a skill to see if somebody has a bounty on them. And then scavenge. Scavenge is intelligence and you're finding stuff. So, oh, memories. So you've got Bible and bounty and intelligence. But and scavenge is under perception and it uses cunning. And so scavenge in the game gives you a +1 to certain stats. But here you can just do that in combat or out of combat. You can just find stuff. So I converted that to a skill check as opposed to just getting stuff. And then everything dies. So the cool thing is the motto of the game is everything dies. So I figured your character would be dying every time. So the thing here is you make probably multiple characters at the start of the game, and then maybe some die, some live, or maybe we can just each make a character, and then if like 3 of them die, you could have a backup character to take in their place. I saw one game that had where you just each player makes 5 people, and they called it a cheese grinder, I think. And whoever survives that then gets to be a real character later in the game. So everything dies. So you have a profession, and what profession you roll determines your starting age. Okay, and your starting age, and then you roll to add to that age. And what happens is your starting age. Let's say you start your age at 26, and you're a minor, so you would die at 46. So the DM will roll what your date of death is. So they would roll this and add that to the second number, or maybe the first number. And so they would get your date of death. You would have your age. The DM would not tell you what your date of death is. So if you died like 20 years from now, he would keep that in secret. And then during the game, you can make a reroll by spending one of those years. So it's sort of a spend a point, get a reroll kind of thing. But you don't know how many years you have left. So the DM at some point may just say, well, you don't have any more. I mean, you could go down and start, having to make dying rolls. And you may say, well, I'm going to spend a year and re-roll that dying roll because I rolled a 20. So I don't want to die. And then you could come back. And then I'm working on a chart so that each adventure, when you come back and you spend a year, depending on how many years you had, you would add that to a roll and get on a chart and get like sort of like a series of what do they call it? Series of unfortunate events. Okay, so that's something cool. And then here's all the abilities. There's random starting abilities if you want. And then here's all the abilities from the Dark Age game. And they have a cost that you can pay in XP. And so everybody gets 100 XP. And you just spend it on stuff. I might start that out at 50. But yeah, so you spend that on stuff. You just buy the ability. Some of them have requirements. So there's defiance, super defiance, deflection, crack shot. All the cool stuff is here. Some of these are brood specific. So these are just all the abilities from the game. So some of these may require that you be brood or Kukulkani. So just keep that in mind. And then there's some spaces like, ugh, that annoys me so much. And there's money, encumbrance, matters. Here are weapons, how much they cost, shields, how they work. weapon tables, ranged weapons, and all the melee weapons that you can have. And the idea is to have these as cards that you can just keep near your character sheet. So each time you use one, you have to roll on a d20 to see if it breaks. And then you, as if you have the craft skill weapons, you can fix them. And then there's all types of cool stuff. There's graphs where you can get mechanical arms, legs, Skylancer jets, smoke bombs, armor suits, which through playing through his games, I've got to make them a lot more expensive. Armor suit mods, and I've taken everything in here. I've literally taken from the game. So I've taken all of the stat cards that had weapons or abilities, and I've re-engineered them into like a flamer or a laser beam or God's judgment, obviously from I think what Saint Michael or Archangel Michael. And then here are all the poisons, which are taken directly from the game. I may change these a little bit, but rot is like in the game as it gives you stuff. And of course there's radiation, and then weapon abilities. So I think the red is stuff that I've changed sort of to fit an RPG. Other stuff hasn't been changed. And then you have a vice. So as you take damage or ability damage or whatever you lose hit points or psych hit points, you will regain those by a certain vice. So gambling, working on stuff, drinking, weird stuff. I guess we'll just leave it at that. Praying, drugs, gambling. You will actually get back 1 point per hour of doing that thing. So if you're out in the desert, you can't gamble, and you're a gambler, you're really out of luck. So the DM I have called the Brahm because the whole Dark Age game is based off of the artwork of Brahm, Gerald Brahm. So I wanted to honor him in a way, and it's the only way that I could figure out. I don't know if y'all come up with another way. Let me know. So in the Forsaken faction, there is a council, and on the council, post purge, now we have Saint Isaac, Master Mary, Saint Mark, Sister Justita, and we have a Lilith. So we have these 5 saints or prevailers on the council, and they will command you on what to do. Pre-purge, I have them, but we don't really know who else is on the council. They're not really spoken of. So this is sort of the DM section on how to run a game, and what to do, so to build encounters. So right now I have it like I just pick stat cards and run it. So let me know if this is cool, if you want to, so I can definitely run this. If this is stupid, I can maybe try and figure out the harp system. I can't find anything on YouTube on how to do that, but I know this really well, and it's the same rules as Dark Age. Yeah, we could be playing the original Dark Age rules in a Dark Age RPG, and then let me know if Moffat, if you want to play in this. We could even get rid of the random tables, and we could just let y'all pick stuff if that's what you want. And we could have that first session, and we all pick everything out. And then any feedback on this would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, so thank you.